agenda, we're going, as I shared, we're going to go over the Action for Healthy Kids, give you a little bit more about our organization for those of you that may not be familiar with Action for Healthy Kids. We're also going to take time where we're going to discuss NAMI and give an overview of NAMI and the resources and services that they provide. Then we'll go into the panel discussion. And that'll be an open conversation where both Ashley and Brianne, our Action for Healthy Kids team, will be asking various questions amongst the panelists. After that, we'll be providing you with some resources and support and upcoming initiatives that we have that we would love for you to be a part of, and then contact information if you would like to connect with us in the future. And so now I'm going to briefly turn it over to Ashley so that she can share a general overview of Action for Healthy Kids.
Thanks, Denise. So Action for Healthy Kids is a national nonprofit organization committed to the belief that healthy kids create a better world. We pursue this vision by mobilizing family school partnerships to address the child health crisis and prepare kids to be healthy in body and mind. We are moms, dads, students, school and community leaders, as well as school wellness experts who have banded together to create healthier learning environments for our children. We believe that everyone has a part to play in ensuring that children are safe, engaged, supported, challenged, and healthy. Our programs, tools, and resources help to make that possible. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Satcher, and today we have more than 130,000 members in our network. We also partner with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations at the national and local level to become change agents for a brighter future.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing that. And one of the things that we also wanted to highlight is one of our overarching, overly ambitious goals within the organization is that one day all students, regardless of where you are, the zip code, the communities that you serve, at one time, everyone will be healthy in body and mind. And there are various initiatives that we have within the organization that really speak to equitable practices, diversity and inclusive practices that we are mindful of in our organization that we believe will help to address various health disparities and inequities within our communities. And because of that, we have our commitment to equity. And we will, when we provide the PowerPoint presentation to you, we do encourage you to take a look at the link, to click on the link, and there you will be able to find more about our organization, and particularly when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and things that we as an organization are standing behind in efforts of making sure that we are able to address and provide health and wellness resources to all of our kids and families, no matter who they are and where they're from. Now we'll have Carmen Martinez with NAMI to share a little bit about NAMI and her organization.
Welcome everyone and happy Tuesday. Thank you for putting this amazing webinar together. So NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's actually the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, and it's really dedicated to build better lives for millions of Americans affected by mental illness. What we provide here at the NAMI Greater Houston affiliate, there's over 650 affiliates all over the nation. So the good thing is, if you have, wherever you're living, citywide, statewide, there's probably a NAMI close to you. But NAMI Greater Houston was actually founded by mothers, by family members. They have loved ones that were diagnosed with a mental illness condition. So we were established in 1988, but our true passion really goes into what we provide completely free at no cost. We provide educational programs, we provide advocacy, public awareness, and really support for anyone that's affected by mental illness. So our vision is pretty simple. As I mentioned, we envision a world where all the people that are affected by mental illness just live healthy, fulfilling, and supportive community that's around them. Our mission is basically what we said, providing the advocacy, education, support. And our value is simple. We believe that possibility of recovery is possible, wellness and the potential in all of us. we really want to empower individuals, families, and anybody that's suffering with a mental illness condition to really address that mental illness conditions are treatable. And we want to definitely embrace diverse backgrounds, cultures, and perspectives. So we're very happy to be here. And Angelina later on is going to really express a little bit more how we started our journey as really individuals in need, and how our volunteer efforts kind of created into being part of this NAMI family. This is our national hotline. If you guys need any help when it comes to any type of mental health needs, they have a text number as well. You can just visit NAMI.org. We have valuable information if you have anything associated with learning more about our psychoeducational programs, our support groups. Good thing right now is everything is pretty much done virtually, so you really can connect from anywhere around the nation.
All right, thank you so much, Carmen, for telling us and sharing more about NAMI and the organization. All right, now it is time for our panel introductions. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and after that, I will turn it directly over to Brianne and Ashley, who will start the panel discussion. As we shared earlier, if time allows, we definitely do want to be able to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to put those in the chat as we go throughout our conversation today. In the event that we're not able to answer those questions, we will be sure to put an FAQ together moving forward, and we'll be able to share that with you over the next couple of days. So first, I'd like to introduce Angelina Hudson. And Angelina, as the Interim Executive Director of NAMI Greater Houston, Angelina is committed to encourage society to acknowledge and engage with all persons at all levels and ability. She has over 20+ years of leadership and management experience, while specializing in topics surrounding mental and emotional health, with an emphasis on resilience and recovery. Her goal is to help families figure out what to do when they're facing a mental illness condition in their families, and she can relate firsthand to families navigating mental illness, as all 3 of her children have experienced mental health challenges. So thank you, Angelina, for joining us today. Next is Dr. Eric Storch. Dr. Storch is a professor at Mickenvale Presidential Endowed Chair and in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Baylor College of Medicine. He specializes in the nature and treatment of childhood and adult obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety among youth with autism. He is dedicated to helping families through research clinics and trainings with a goal to increase effective, tested treatment and enhance mental wellness in all families. So thank you, Dr. Storch, for being here. Next, we have Nicole. At 15, Nicole moved into the United States from China and struggled to navigate a new language and new country, which contributed to anxiety and depression with limited access to mental health resources. Today, Nicole uses her voice as a mental health advocate and peer supporter to raise awareness about the barriers to mental health resources and support that English as second language learners and immigrant families face. She is a NAMI Greater Houston presenter and peer support, and also serves on the City of Houston's Be Well, Be Connected initiative in support of the mayor's office and Baylor College of Medicine. Nicole is currently in college, attaining her associate's degree in philosophy. So thank you, Nicole, for being here. And last, we have Issa. Born in England, Issa's story begins with her journey through school, crisscrossing 3 continents before high school, while navigating the effects of systemic racism and school pressure on mental health and well-being. In 2019, Issa co-founded a nonprofit organization called the Mental Health Hub, aimed at bringing mental health education, resources, and support to marginalized communities, and uses her voice as a mental health advocate and motivational speaker. She has recently become a board member of National Mental Health Advisory Board, working with the Wellbeing Trust, Active Minds, and Young Invincibles, to help spearhead the creation of a mental health advocacy digital toolset for youth by young ages, adults between 16 and 24 years old. So thank you, Issa, for coming. And now I'll turn it over to Ashley and Brianne to lead our conversation with the panelists.
Thank you, Denise. And thank you again to everyone joining us tonight. As Ashley alluded to earlier for us, we at Action for Healthy Kids, and presumably all of us here this evening, recognize that social emotional health and mental health is foundational to physical health, and one cannot be comprehensively addressed without the other. So with that, we're going to jump right into this evening's questions. Our first question to get us started is going to be for all of the panelists that are comfortable sharing. And we are interested in hearing what motivated or prompted you to become an advocate for mental health. So Angelina, if you are comfortable, would you be open to kicking us off tonight?
Well, I can honestly say, thank you for that question, but I can honestly say I did not come into the arena as a mental health advocate willingly. I was brought into this arena through the diagnosis of my children at very young ages. They were all diagnosed in elementary school at different years. One was diagnosed, well, I knew there was a problem at 7 months with one who is now diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And then I had another child diagnosed at age 6 with ADHD, the inattentive type, which came with auditory processing disorder, executive function disorder. And these are medical conditions. These diagnoses are not just labels, or they're not just open doors to special education services. They are real treatable medical conditions if you get the right information on how to intervene. And then my last child, actually, with all that I know through NAMI, I missed it. And he was in the 7th grade, diagnosed with, well, it evolved. It started off with ADHD, then bipolar disorder, well, no, ADHD, then depression, and then bipolar disorder with a scioptic processing disorder, which is what the reading specialist discovered in school. So he also has a visual processing disorder. And that made me a mental health advocate. I mean, who gives up on a child? So with the appropriate supports, and I can't say that my family was on board at the beginning. I can't say that my church members were on board at the beginning. It took a lot of not only educating me and building up my stamina, but also educating all of the arenas that I entered, whether that was school, church, community. I had to raise awareness so that people would understand what we were going through.
Thank you for sharing. Eric, I saw that you were also off mute. Would you be open to sharing what prompted you?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a family where the mark of a person is who you helped. And there are a lot of different ways of helping, but my mom's a teacher, my dad's a physician, and it was sort of always, really burned into you that that's what you do. And so one of my early tasks was, or early roles, I was a camp counselor for inner city kids during my high school years. And I remember two main things. One was that all these kids had behavioral health problems that I really couldn't pinpoint because I was 16, what I know. But there was this brilliant social worker named Rocky who the kids adored. It was clearly the mechanism for their success within these camps. So if you fast forward, from there, I get to college and I sort of find this love of the clinical work, doing, volunteering stuff that college kids do, but also the research piece. And if you fast forward a little bit more, I get my first real job out of graduate school. And what I realize is that there's this massive disparity when you compare mental health to other types of physical health in terms of the quality of care. So we're represented throughout the country, and frankly, most places in the world. Let's just say you have a heart attack. You go to the hospital. Let's keep it to North America. You're going to get pretty much the same care from one place to the next, but not with mental health. And so that became immediately clear that we had massive variations in care. And at the same time, that there was an opportunity to start addressing that. And so all those things together, realizing that you can have an impact, you can change a field at a vis-a-vis research, but at a local level, because you're involving people within the research or just your clinic in general. Those were some of the pieces that really have driven me along this path.
Thank you. Isa, would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was growing up, I grew up in England, and a lot of the time I was kind of, there's a lot of academic pressure. And that was good, you know, I was just always studying, and with my African parents, it was definitely not out of the norm. But where I was, as far as moving schools, I went to about 12 different schools in about 8 years. And so, and a lot of the schools were also predominantly in white schools, and I was the only Black child. So there was a lot of different issues. I felt like I had, like, it was a lot of isolation for me. And that kind of transformed into academic pressure and kind of associating myself and my self-worth with the scores I got in classes. That lasted for a long time, along with the bullying and just, you know, kind of feeling discriminated against. And then I moved to Nigeria, which was where my mom and dad are from, and then moved back to England. And so there's a lot of change for me. And then I moved to America. And so through that, I always had this dissociation between who I feel like I should be and who I was. And being an immigrant, you know, and my parents, and also being African, you couldn't really broach these kinds of topics, you know, with your parents, because it's kind of like, just succeed, just push through, just, you know, they don't have that time, that luxury. And so growing up, I faced depression, I faced anxiety, eating disorders, and I just didn't really know what these were at the time. I just felt like I'm always sad. I don't know why. I get super anxious. I don't know why. I feel like I need to control something because everything else is moving. It's out of my control. So then I started focusing on my food. And that led me to start to figure out, especially when I was in college, why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? Why doesn't anyone else talk about it? And the more I talked about it, the more I realized other people had situations that were like this, and other people had issues, and other people may not have mental illness, but they had mental issues. And kind of, you know, just to kind of refer back to what Eric said, because I do a lot of speaking on behalf of NAMI, and I shout out to Angelina here. One thing I always say in my speaking is that, you know, if you're driving down the street and you see an old man and he's, you know, he has a broken leg, you would stop your car immediately and be like, hey, get in the car, let me take you to a hospital, let's get that treated. You know, there's an understanding from my perspective is that there's something wrong. There's an understanding from his perspective that he's in pain, and there's a place that you need to go. Let's go to the hospital. And there's a means to get there, which is the vehicle I'm driving. But with mental health, there's nothing like that, right? I will not notice that broken leg. The man will not feel like he has a broken leg. There's no vehicle sometimes to get there to the hospital, which is a place to be treated. And I feel like, you know, my thing is, even though I may not be a clinician, I may not be super educated, but what I can do is start breaching these subjects with youth. And so my focus is really, you know, on basically 6 to 17 years old, which is normally about, I think the statistic is 17% of those are the ones that have, you know, mental health illnesses. So I really just wanted to be that bridge to say, hey, there's someone like me that exists. If I had known someone like me and I felt like I could talk to me, then I would have said these things. And this is what I'm trying to tell you in your age, and you facing things that you may not know what they are. This is what it could be. And these are, you know, resources that you could have and that you have access to. And if you don't have access to it, here's things online. And I just think that that's really important. And I didn't have that. And I feel like, you know, it made me who I am today, which is, you know, a speaker and a youth coach and all those things, but it also was very traumatic for me as well. And I'm not saying that it would have been easier, but it definitely would have been a little bit more enlightening if I had known, okay, this is not just in my head, you know, there are things that this is called, these are tangible symptoms, kind of like what Angelina was saying. So all those things are what motivates me.
That's very powerful. Thank you very much for sharing, Issa. We appreciate it. Nicole, how about yourself?
Hi, everyone. everyone. I grew up in China, and then it was not a really good environment for people who suffered with mental health issues. So growing up, I think in middle school and elementary school as well, I just felt really isolated because there's no therapists in my area or in my town. I came from a really small town, so if you're seeing a therapist or if you're taking medication, you'll be identified as crazy, and you need to be sent to a psychiatric hospital, which is kind of like kind of typical what people would imagine in psychiatric hospitals. So when I moved here, it just doesn't make sense for me to reach out for help when I was isolated in school. And then on top of that, there wasn't many people who were nice to me in school because of the language barrier and everything. And also I tried to reach out to counselors, but they're just super busy with class schedules and everything. So it was really hard for me to talk to them about my issues. I got hospitalized when I was a senior in high school, and it was a really tough decision as well because I was the one who's navigating the mental health system. While my mom doesn't speak English, so I had to do everything myself. So I had to reach out to psychiatric hospitals and then see, hey, can you admit me because I need help. So my first step was not to like talk to a therapist. My first step was just went straight to a psychiatric hospital because I just didn't know what to do. So I guess from then on, it was just kind of like, it was changed my life, I guess. I know there are a lot of stigma with psychiatric hospitals, but thankfully, the one I went through was a safety net hospital, and then the doctors there were really great. And then I got to kind of like receive my treatments for free because it's a safety net hospital. So I just felt really grateful, and I want to give back. And I just don't want to see another immigrant high schoolers who doesn't really speak English to just suffer in silence. So that's how I became an advocate for mental health.
Thank you very much for sharing your story, Nicole. We appreciate it. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Ashley for our next question this evening.
Thanks, Brianne. So my question is around approaching mental health. So when we think about treatment and services, resources and education, and how we destigmatize the ways in which we perceive and speak about mental health, why is an equitable approach to mental health important? And for this one, Angela, I think Angelina, you started us last time, so maybe we'll work backwards. Nicole, do you want to kick us off if you feel comfortable?
Yeah, I'm going to read the question again because it's kind of long questions. I'm going to read it again. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Oh yeah. So I think kind of like in speaking of mental health, there are more than one aspects that we can attack, I guess. I guess it's just they all need to work together. So for example, if we have a lot of services or treatments available and resources, but if there's not enough education for people, especially students or students who don't speak English, or even family or new immigrants, then no matter how many like services or resources we have out there, if they can't access it, is kind of like they don't know it. So, and they won't get the help that they need. So I think Carmen made a really great point of like sending a link out there, because NAMI has a lot of resources for school and for students as well. And also I think that this destigmatizing part is really important, because even though we have a lot of resources out there, if people don't feel comfortable reaching out to those resources, or even asking for help from teachers or families or friends, then it will be really difficult to access those resources and actually get the help that they need. Kind of going back to resources, I think it's just there's never enough resources for people because there's always new immigrants and all students important as well. So yeah, it's kind of like a well-rounded approach will be really important.
Thank you so much for sharing. Angelina, I saw you came off of mute. Do you want to go next?
Oh, I never went back on mute, but sure, okay.
Oh.
I had strong thoughts as I heard everyone's response to the last question that feeds into this one. When you're talking about equity and having equitable resources for people with mental health, the people on this call are those who are going to reach out. And I have one of those. One of my three was very open and receptive to her diagnosis. She's very compliant with her treatment plan. She speaks on behalf of NAMI nationally and locally. She goes to the doctor. She's very well in control of her recovery. One of my three is who I call my Yahoo. Okay, I'm in Texas. I use the word Yahoo, and I refer to him in that way because he's not sick. It's you. You're the problem. And no matter how many resources are offered to him on a school campus or through his community or even through NAMI or even through his family, he's going to find his own way. The only thing I'm thankful for is that we've provided such a wealth of resources that he is picking up a few that is suitable to him. Not what I want, but it is suitable to him, and it is maintaining what looks to me maturity and recovery is in his future, right? But equity doesn't mean provide the same thing to everyone. That is not equity when you're talking about mental health. Mental health is understanding the broad spectrum of how mental illness impacts a person, and then level up the resources to address people who have ADHD, who may have dissociative mood disorder, who may have anxiety or depression, who may have all mental health conditions are not widely accepted by the community that says they want to help. I'm that voice. So, okay, my name is Angelina. I'm the one who is really championing for the person who says, I'm rejecting this illness. And then what do we do as a community? This is what NAMI has done for me. It has helped me understand that there's no room for me to give up. I don't have to accept what my young person is saying and just walk away, or my spouse is saying and just walk away, or my parent is saying. There are skills that the network of support, the caregivers, the loved ones, there are things that we can learn to set boundaries, let go of certain ideals so that we can define what recovery and success looks like for us, so that we can also share that with our loved ones. And that's, I don't know, that doesn't come in a bottle. It doesn't come in a treatment plan, but it is a full wraparound. Mental illness does not impact one person in the house. It impacts every member that lives with that person and all the people that love them. And unfortunately, it may also impact the law enforcement officer and the school personnel and the college professor, because, you're going to interface with these people. And then you have to know, what does equity mean? Equity means providing a person what they need in whatever state they're in, if it is truly a mental health, behavioral health, medical condition.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Angelina. I appreciate you drawing attention to the complexity of mental health and recognizing that every lived experience is different, and that means a different approach for everyone. Eric, were you going to jump in next?
Yeah, sure. And those were both, phenomenal responses. And a quick shout out to Nicole, who represents our SAMHSA Be Well, Be Connected program, and is always kind of a reminder that I never could, if I was competing against her, never get into graduate school or so on. The only two things I'd maybe add, one is this issue of justice. Like, it's just right. It's a value thing. If I think you said brought up a great point. You see someone, an elderly person, hurt on the street, you don't hesitate. If someone's having a heart attack and they get brought to the emergency room, even if they don't have money, you treat them and you stabilize and you move from there. But here there's a lack of justice. And I think it's sort of a question of who we want to be as a society. The other piece, which sort of dovetails with that and, builds on Angelina's point too, is, as mental health is kind of a medical, condition. You have to have a intermediate and long-term game. I mean, we've gotten to a point where we know the things that work. Now it's about delivering them and delivering them to all. So if we allow disparities to take place or variations in care, so one subgroup gets crappier care than the other subgroup, we're essentially shooting ourselves in the foot because we'll be perceived by our weakest link. And so if that happens, what happens next is that insurance starts dictating care, which they already probably do. They dictate lower rates. And then you get people who aren't trained the same way providing care. And so we have to be advocates and we have to fight back because what we do works. It's just that question of, are we able to get it? Are we getting it out there consistently to everyone that warrants it? And the answer right now, sadly, is nah. We're really not doing a good enough job. The positive spin on that, though, is we're doing a heck of a lot better today than we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I predict that 5 years from now, we'll be doing better than we are today. But there's still so much room to go. So couple thoughts on top of those excellent ones previously.
Thank you so much. Issa?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Nicole, Angelina, Eric, you made some really good points. When we think of, the original question is why is an equitable approach to mental health important? When I think of equity, it's fairness, right? It's having an even playing field. And as Angelina said, it's not about administering the same resources and the same care to every single person. It's really about having an individualistic approach and spending the time to understand, out of all the resources, out of all the different types of care, what works for this individual. And, as we've said, the physical importance is so dramatically different from the mental health importance. As a society, I feel like we don't have an equal approach when it comes to mental health. We look at, hospitals, we look at physical care in such a different light to mental care. And it still baffles me. I don't understand it because I feel like it's everything. When you think of a person, you think of the lifestyle, you think of mental, emotional, you think of financial, you think of physical, you think of all these different things that constitutes to somebody in their lifestyle, but we're so behind. And until we kind of catch up, we will never have this equitable approach. But nevertheless, we have people like these people on the panel and myself and everybody who joined, who obviously knows that it's important to keep pushing. I think not only is it important from that approach, I think it's important just from an individual approach, because even if we do not give these, even if we don't have the resources for people still have to live their daily lives. I met so many different people who are in school, who have graduated, who are working, who are out of school and they're doing their own thing, or who have started a business. And they are dealing with their mental illness, either in a good way or in a bad way. And as Angelina said, some people agree that they have one or they don't. And I think it's so important that we have a level of care and we have this individualistic approach, because they're the ones that suffer. It's not that, oh, we just didn't do it and everything is fine. People are suffering and people are dealing with things that they shouldn't have to, or they're going about it in the wrong way, not because they don't care, but because out of ignorance or out of lack of access to care. And I think it's important that we really spend time figuring out how we can get care to each person, because even when I talk to some people, they've never dealt with depression in their life. They're like, oh, I'm never depressed. I've never encountered that. Then they get married, they have a child, maybe they have a second child, and then they deal with postpartum depression. And it's a different kettle of fish. So, as I always say, people deal with trauma in a different way. And you may be fine all your life. You may not have my story or Nicole's story, or Angelina's kid's story, but you may be 30 or 50. And then you have a different encounter. And then that makes you realize, okay, I need to figure out how to deal with this situation or this trauma in a better way so that I can live a healthy life. And so I think that, when we think of these different things, it's really important that we make it equitable, we make it fair, we make it even, because at one point or another, you will deal with something that can strain your mental health. And you may not have an illness that you're born with or a mental imbalance, but I do feel like there are some things that you will deal with in life that will strain it. Just like if you're running, you could pull a muscle, you could break your leg, but it doesn't mean you will never run again. It just means that at that point in your life, you had to take different care and different action. And I think that that's what we need to do on our mental health as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Brianne, I'll hand it back to you for the next question.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. So thinking specifically about a young adult and youth and adolescent audience, and knowing that each of you bring a very different lived experience and perspective to the conversation tonight, can you each share how you feel schools, districts, practitioners, and caregivers can all support one another and work collaboratively to fill the gaps that exist in recognizing, in diagnosing, and in treating the mental health of children and teens? Let's see, we will kick it off with Isa, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, schools, this was where my issues were started. So I feel like there's a lot of things that schools can do. When you think of the youth or, just kids in general, middle school, high schoolers, this is where you live. This is your world. You go to school, you hang out with friends, you spend a lot of your time is around school. And a lot of times people think, oh, schools are there to educate. That's why I send my child off to school. No, schools are there to protect. They're one of the places in the institution or in the society that's supposed to protect the child. And through protecting, they educate and they instill values. They're not supposed to bring up your child, but they are supposed to kind of socialize your child and educate them. So one thing I think of when I think of just a generic school and how that they can help with recognizing and diagnosing is to be present. A lot of times we think of just teachers being there, but let's face it, you see one teacher to every 30 kids, and sometimes, especially with this new world we're living in, it's online. So I think that schools can have a better, what they can do is have different people who are really educated and are present to talk with each child. I'm not saying have a therapy session every week, but I am saying interact with them with someone who is educated and who is licensed, who can go in and talk with a child. And it's not, oh, this person is loud or this person is erratic in class, let's send her off to, a therapist. It's every single child, because when you hear Nicole's story and my story, is different. And, I was very quiet, just like she was. And I was doing well in school, but I was doing well. And what, I guess, motivated me to do well was from a very dark place. And you would have never known that if you just said, oh, Issa's doing well in school, she gets A's, she's a straight A kid, she's great. I wasn't. But I think that a teacher would have never seen that. And it's not up for the teacher to do that. So I think that schools, yes, you have a teacher there, you have a therapist there, but I think it's really important to, just like you're measuring us academically or kids academically, you also try and have something that you can measure mental health wise as well, making sure that I want to talk to someone, okay, who can I talk to? There were so many times when I moved to this country, we have lockers in America. In England, we don't have that. At least back then we didn't have it. Maybe we do now. Everyone wants to copy American systems, but back then we didn't. And so it was very new. And I remember I didn't know my combination, and I tried and I tried and I tried. And I just, for some reason, just associated that with me failing. Like I just didn't know the combination. And it was so weird to think of it now, very dramatic, but that's how I felt. And until I got that combination right, I just felt that what's inside that locker, I'm not able to get to my schoolwork, I'm not able to get to my classes. And I just attached a lot of importance to it. But if I had been able to talk to someone and been like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, this is what is going on with me, I feel like I would have had a better and more healthy approach to opening that combination lock and getting the books that were inside it, So, these things I didn't say out loud. It was inside your mind, and I'm sure Eric can tell us more about why that happens. But I think there's a lot of importance to schools, especially as a youth, because your life is literally around your school. And we have to figure out how we can equip the schools to help these kids. Because as I said, the kids are the ones that are losing out. I remember I talked, and I'll make this short, I talked to one class, and one girl was very quiet in the classroom. And the teacher was like, oh, it's okay, she's always really quiet. And I always like people to tell me your name, tell me this, like what we did at the beginning of this panel discussion. And she didn't say her name. She didn't seem interested. She was on the phone. I was like, okay, so the teacher said she was quiet. At the end of the 30-minute talk, I said, you know what? Hey, how are you? You were really quiet. You didn't answer any of the questions. Are you doing okay? I heard you're quiet, but I just want to ask you. She talked a little bit and she kind of was on her phone. Long story short, after a while, she broke down and said, that she doesn't like to talk because she feels like no one's listening to her. And she kind of told me that, basically her parents are going through a divorce. They never listen to her. And she just feels like if she talks and no one listens to her, she feels this slight of rejection. She opened up to me and she said she was basically trying to commit suicide that week, that she had planned to do that. This was after 30 minutes of talking with her specifically after that talk. So you would have never known that that child is feeling the way she was feeling. And obviously when she told me, I alerted the right people and we dealt with that situation. But I bring this up to say, you never can judge a child by the cover, just like a book. You have to really sit down with that child and give the child the attention that they need and they deserve. So until the schools start doing that, we will still have kids slipping through the cracks.
Thank you very much, Isa. Eric, would you like to also chime in?
Yeah, that was awesome. It reminds me, my favorite saying is, to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. And I mean, like you kind of catching that kid who was quiet. I mean, it's stuff like that that makes a difference. And I think I won't repeat. I mean, the excellent points on schools. I mean that, right? Every kid, for the most part, goes to school. And if they don't go to school, they need to be aware they don't go to school because there's a problem. So that's sort of your equalizer. Everyone has it. I think from there, it's building the system of care that, Nicole's a part of here in Houston. We have so many other great people, but it's like everyone coming together, to establish a village to support those that need help. And doing stuff like building out learning collaboratives so that we do the treatments that work well, figuring out who are the resources that can provide support, are also big pieces. I think one of our challenges, just to say the evil word or the bad word, is going to be money, and so there are a whole bunch of areas that I think are concerns. I mean, one is, insurance-based care is terrible. The reimbursement rates are so poor for the providers. So what you see is sort of a flight of providers outside of community mental health centers or hospital systems who do that. And that's sort of the side benefit of research, because it's just free. Like, hey, we're going to study this therapy. It's safe. We're going to make you do some questionnaires and interviews, but we can treat you for free. And I love that stuff. But I think we need to think about the funding sources, and then having advocates like those on this call, NAMI, and others. I mean, this is critical to kind of bring that forward. In Texas, as an example, post Santa Fe shooting, there was understandably a massive amount of concern. And so the legislature has passed, initially it was 100 million over 2 years, and then it increased to about 118. That's all focused on child mental health, and how do you get stuff in the schools for those kids that you're really worried about, aren't hospitalized level, but sort of right below it. And they get short-term treatment. For one, we built out a phone psychiatrist for the pediatrician. Is another option. So you have the pediatricians treating, kind of lower level, in the sense of like they can handle mild depression. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And so I think, what this sort of goes to is building out that system. Takes money and it takes people with big hearts, which that's probably the easiest part of it. But just some sort of funding piece at play. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric. Angelina or Nicole, would either of you like to add anything?
Well, I did want to interject that, I spent 24 years on the journey of spreading this message and raising the level of education on many school campuses, on many school districts. And you would probably wonder, well, how did you do that, right? So step one, when you're dealing with a student and their family, is getting to the place where they recognize there's a problem. But if you start off with, do you think your child has a mental illness? You're going to lose that argument. That no, so usually children who are dealing with ADHD or oppositionally defiant behavior, they're really very smart, very intelligent, hyperlexic, speak 8 languages. That was my kids, right? Like, where'd you get that from? So I was not in denial with the first one because his health condition was so profound. His issues were so profound, right? Not being able to speak for 7 years, that's pretty significant. But with the other 2, I'm like, no, that child is perfect, which, we done made it to the 1st grade. What are you saying? And so I had a hard time. But once, and for each of those other 2 diagnoses, I had the same, like, say it ain't so, Sam, right? And I would go back to NAMI and take the class again, because NAMI helped me with the first one. Maybe NAMI will help me with the 2nd and the 3rd. And it did help, because what you're introduced to is all the different types of therapists, all the different types of doctors and clinicians, all of the different treatment options. And I also learned all of the other mental health servant organizations in my area. I tell people all the time, it took 12 organizations for me to sit here today, sane and in my right mind. Now, I didn't keep my black hair, but it's white, but that's okay. I'm still here and I'm whole, because there were other organizations like DBSA and Mental Health America and ADA, which is for ADHD, and the Borderline Group, the National Education Association for Borderline Personality Disorder. I used information at all, even the Rights Law Conference. I went to every conference, and when there was something that I could not afford, because Dr. Storch, you're right, there were years we didn't have medical insurance. But these organizations taught me what non-educational funds are through TEA. They taught me, I had so much, a wealth of information that I didn't learn in just one particular place. I used all of the community-based organizations and their annual, I even got a flight to a Learning the Brain conference in San Francisco that was afforded through another nonprofit. And I just read, the one resource I had, and this is the one resource I've always had, is I can read and I can comprehend. And so I read IDEA, I read the 504 classification. I actually learned what accommodations and modifications were. And when I didn't know, I went to the ARC of Greater Houston and asked them a lot of questions. And so the only reason as a family member, I became team, you fill in the blank. I was team Olivia, team Cameron, team Quentin. The only reason I started developing these teams is because of the education I received. But the only reason I wanted education is because I accepted the diagnosis. I recognized that my children had a problem, and there were people in my path, like the 1st grade, 2nd grade teacher. They didn't try to give me a whole big diagnosis. They just said, how can we help you? What's going on at home that's different than what's going on at school, where we can intervene? Do you think there's, I even had a PCP, a primary care physician. She said, I've never treated a child with autism. This is 24 years ago. She said, I've never treated a child with autism. She said, but you know what? I have a pen. What do you need me to write? Do you understand the power in that? When you have a physician partnering with you on your team to help you find resources for your child, there are more good people out there that care and are concerned about your welfare than not. And I think that is the recipe for recovery and success with any family looking for resilience and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Angelina. Nicole, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think everyone had some really great points. Especially, I agree. I could resonate with everyone's points, especially like Isa mentioned that it's the school's job to protect students. But when teachers and counselors have so many jobs and so many things on their plates, it's hard to really reach out to, every quiet kids and everyone who, seems that they need some help. And then sometimes they might be too tired from teaching or too tired from all the meetings with other teachers or the school leaders. So it's just really hard to actually sit down with like that one quiet kid and then just ask them, oh, how are you doing? You seem really quiet today. So I guess that's how like nonprofits can like really kind of like help out school districts, and then just kind of like alleviate some of the stress from teachers and really kind of recognize kids who are quiet and might not seem that, and maybe they just look like they don't need any help, and you just feel like, oh, she's fine, she doesn't need any help, she's just quiet. So I think that's a really important piece, like when kind of nonprofits can support school districts and also caregivers and students. And also, I think Dr. Storger was mentioning like we need a lot of like collaboratives, and then also money is a really big issue, especially to like patients like me. So I'm really glad that I have insurance through my mom. And then it's sometimes like, and then even if you have insurance, you're like good insurance, and insurance are not really good. So unfortunately, I have like this not really good insurance. So like when I go to the insurance website, like the selection for therapists or psychiatrists are severely limited because of my insurance plan. Sometimes, when you reach out to a certain facility or agency, they only accept certain types of insurance. So even though you have like a practitioner there you really like, you can't really reach out to them, or you can't really sit down with them unless you have that insurance or paid out of pocket. And then it's just really, I don't know, I would wish to like kind of just have like just talk to them, or maybe they have a sliding scale. That'll be much easier. And then it's just like sometimes it's just really disheartening to hear that some major policy changes only happen when something really devastating has happened, like the school shooting and stuff. So it would be great that if we could recognize it early, maybe using like some data we gather from school and students or practitioners, so we can like make changes early on instead of wait until the last minute, and then when something happened and that would be too late. I think like in terms of the question, like how school districts and like everyone can like support each other is important to like kind of like maybe foster an atmosphere or kind of like a norm that it's okay to ask for help, and we're here to help you. We're here to help each other because we don't live in a society alone. Like we're all here to help each other, which is why we have this panel discussion today. So it's just that kind of like and kind of fostering a norm sounds really vague and abstract. So I think like some initiatives from NAMI and other nonprofits are kind of like slowly getting the younger generation to know that it's okay to ask for help, and there is help out there, and recovery is possible. So I think that's how everyone can work together and support each other, and then kind of like treating people who are in need and recognizing those who need help. And also, the people who are quiet are, like me, it's just really hard to reach out for help unless, someone like Isa asks me, oh, how are you doing? So that's really important too. So we should all ask each other if we're doing okay, and maybe just, reach out and like smile, say hello to people. That would make my day in high school, to be honest. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Appreciate it. Ashley, I'm going to kick it over to you for the next question.
All right. Well, before we jump into this next question, I just want to thank you all for bringing so much attention to the different barriers that exist when accessing mental health, including talking about some of the stigma and some of the challenges that each of you experience in your role and through your lived experience. So as we near the end of our time, I want to jump into a question specifically for Isa and Nicole. So this question is, what advice do you have? What's the takeaway that you would want teachers and caregivers, so parents, families, et cetera, looking to support the mental health of children and teens but are feeling unsure of where to start or how to have the conversation? What is the one takeaway, or what advice would you give them? And I think if anyone would like to start, feel free to unmute.
Okay, I can go. So there's a lot of advice I would give caregivers, so parents. The first thing, as Angelina had said, is definitely to be open-minded, because no one person knows it all, everybody thinks their child is the best, the brightest, and they are, but it's just in their own way. And some kids require more care in certain areas than others. Besides that, I would say be patient. This is a process. This is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. It's a lifestyle change. And I think that that's one thing about it, is that people just feel like they just want to rush the process and get over, okay, let me just, if I just go to a therapist, or if I just, you know, get this, for me, get this exam done, or finish school, or get a good job, and I'm going to be fine, like I'm going to be good. Or if you finally realize that there may be something that's going on, if I go to a therapist, then I'll be fine. It's like, there's certain things that you can do, but everything has its time. I'm a Christian. In the Bible, in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 to 10, it talks about having a time for everything under the sun. And in a lot of different cultures and religions, there's that kind of adage. And I think that's really important. There's a time for everything. And making sure that you are equipping yourself with the right tools once you accept where you are in life is important, but also making sure that you give yourself that time to process things and move accordingly is important. And I think that that would also be shared with parents as well when you're dealing with someone who has a mental health illness. But besides being patient, I would say be educated. The biggest thing, like what Angelina was doing, is she was educating herself, and that really helped her help her kids. And I think a lot of people don't, that are not educated, they don't feel that they need to kind of go online. And that's why I have my nonprofit called the Mental Health Hub, which basically exposes mental health resources to people in a bite-sized way. It's not so overwhelming, you know, like some people are like Angelina and they can process all those information, but some people may not be. But education, I think, is really important, because you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't know something, you can't base your actions on what you don't know. And that could be detrimental to the person you're trying to help and you love. So I think that's really what it is. Everyone is human. Everybody, you know, just because you want to help doesn't mean that you are helping. That's another thing I will also say. Just because your intentions are good doesn't mean your actions are. So being patient, being educated, and knowing that you are human and they are too, and everyone, as we said, should deserve the right level of care, should guide their steps.
Much, Issa. Nicole, is there anything that you would want to give as far as advice, or any takeaways that you would want teachers or caregivers to take away from today's conversation?
Yeah, I think by attending, meetings or panel discussions like this has been a great first step to like helping your students and stuff. And also maybe like if you're like in a school leadership, maybe I guess it's important to take care of like teachers' mental health as well. I guess if the teachers are feeling great and they're well rested, they'll kind of like having the mindset that, oh, my mental health matters, and so are my students' mental health. So I think that would be a great first step, to maybe take care of your teachers and then let them know that it's important to take care of your students as well. And also I think kind of like if you're a teacher, I like the emoji thing going on in the introduction. So so if you're maybe like a teacher and then you're starting your class in the morning or having class, you can ask your students, so how are you feeling today? Or just maybe like doing some sort of like virtual kind of like virtual daily check-ins to like, oh, how are you feeling today? This is my emoji today. And then they can just talk about their feelings, maybe just for a little bit in class, so they know that, oh, this teacher is cool, like they care about me, they care about my mental health. And then also I think it's important to kind of maybe share some flyers or some posters about mental health in your classroom. And then I'm pretty sure someone, maybe not everyone will look at it, but someone will. And that person who's looking at it might change their life. If they know, oh, this is a suicide hotline, I can reach out to this phone number and I'll get help, or this is a support group I can attend. And then I think that they might just go there. Then your little poster could change a student's life, which is really cool, really awesome. So yeah, I think, and also like you said, like we need time. It takes time to like let people accept mental health. And also for kids is like, some of my classmates, they just, they're scared that their parents will find out that they're seeing a therapist or talking to a school counselor. So it really takes time for the parents' part to like understand the importance of mental health. And then I guess, and emphasize that if you talk to a school counselor that like maybe the HIPAA rule, like we won't tell the parents everything, you know, unless something happens, we'll tell them. So yeah, it takes time for students and also parents and also school administrators to kind of really understand the importance of mental health. So yeah, that's my takeaways.
Thank you both so much for sharing. I think the message that you know, kind of the thread throughout both of your responses is really around just, you know, being human and spending the time to gather the information. I know, Issa, you said, you know, we don't know what we don't know. So the more that we take the time to create that space to learn and better show up for others. And Nicole, you talked about caring for yourself so that you can care for others. We know that we can't pour from an empty cup. So that is a really wonderful takeaway. So I appreciate you sharing that. Brianne, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thanks, Ashley. So as we approach a quarter of the hour and our time starts to dwindle down together, we're going to have just one more question this evening. Kind of on the flip side of the question that Ashley just posed, we are going to have a question specifically for Eric and Angelina. So for you both, from the perspective of being both a parent and a professional in the field, what would your recommendation be to another caregiver who may have just discovered that their child is navigating challenges related to their mental health? And if either of you would like to kick it off first.
Angelina, defer to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eric. One of the first things, and I'll never forget it, the very, very first week, day one that I stepped into a NAMI class, and I sat around the table with 22 other parents and cracked open this big binder with this information. The first thing that I was taught, because I didn't know, even 4 years into the journey, I didn't know that I was experiencing a trauma. We see a mental health diagnosis, a chronic major diagnosis to a child or an adult, as a trauma to the family. It's a trauma. You count 10 fingers, 10 toes, they're eating, they're gaining weight, they're making these milestones. You think you're on your way, and then all of a sudden you find out, oh my gosh, something is wrong. You go to the doctor, you take a battery of tests, you wait for all the results to come back, and you find out that there's no quick fix. There's no medicine that's just going to wipe it away. There's no therapy that's going to, it's just not, it's not rehabilitation, it's habilitation, right? So all of a sudden your world comes crashing down. And I was pushing through it. I was getting busy trying to get information and resources, and I was not addressing my own pain, my own disappointment. I was tearing people up. My poor parents stopped talking to me. My husband, he was holding on for dear life because he didn't know if he was going to be able to stay married. I was cleaning out the savings account, paying for all kind of tests and exams. You understand? More than 80% of marriages where there's a disability involved in the family end in divorce, which is higher than the national average for divorces across the board. And that's because of the emotional tear up that happens between those caregivers that are clearly, and I would say and do things that really were out of character. That's because I didn't know until someone told me these are the predictable stages of trauma. The first one is denial, crisis, shock, hope against hope. The second stage is where you learn to cope. However, it kicks off with a strong dose of anger and resentment, right? That this has happened to you. And with all the tears, I didn't know I had anger and resentment issues because I was trying to go it alone. And then with the right types of intervention, you get into the third stage that's called advocacy, where, okay, you sobered up, you accept the diagnosis, you accept the treatment, and you're just trying to make your way. This is the thing about trauma, though. Anything can trigger you going back up into another stage. It's not 1, 2, 3, you're done. You can go from 1 to 2, back up to 1 to 3, back up to 1. It just really kind of depends on what your journey involves. And along each and every one of those stages, there's a list of what you need. NAMI produces this predictable stages of trauma, because when your emotion is high, you have two sides of your brain. One is logic and reason. The other one is experience and emotion. And when emotion and the amygdala is fired up, all of your logic and your reason goes out the door. So what do I say to caregivers? Take care of you first. Them children gonna be all right. You got to take care of you first, because it's just like in the airplane with the oxygen mask. They say, make sure you get air first, because if you pass out, you can't help the younger one. It's the same way in the mental health or behavioral health journey. If you don't take care of you, there is no one left to take care of that loved one that you care about so much. You don't know what you don't know, and you can't know until somebody tells you. So you just take it one day at a time. Be easy on yourself. Stop lashing out at your family members, because usually there's some sort of issue going on inside of you, and that's James 4:2, Issa. Why is there quarreling among you? Is because of the disfattest. Okay, we're not in church, but I'm just going to say that, there's help out there. People care, but you have to get over you first. And you may need help with that as well. And there is support for that. And I hope you reach out because of this wonderful panel discussion. Thank y'all for inviting me.
Yeah, and just a thought on top of that. I got my wife a mug for Mother's Day some year that was basically said FBI can't do better research than a worried mom. And I think part of it, the meaning is you got to keep trying. You got to keep going different options. Every day without fail, I get at least one email from a parent. And you know what these parents don't know is they sort of cut the line when they do that, because like my heart breaks, and it's like, all right, there's always an hour. Like I had lunch last time I think I had a lunch break was about 15 years ago, because there's just always an hour. And so I think you just have to keep trying to find resources. And it's sort of, I always draw back to dating. Not that I know anything about that or anything else, but it's like, you don't marry the first person that you date most of the time. And so you keep trying, and that's how it is with behavioral health, just trying to find the right match. And sometimes it just takes a while. And while, for parents, I mean, you want to have the answer immediately. To Angelina's point, it is a process. I think someone mentioned this in the comment, like it is a journey. It's not over in a minute. And that's hard, especially for the New Yorker in me, who's like, let's finish this. But I think, keep trying, keep reaching out. Informational networks, such as this, are incredible. I find the Parents Network is remarkable as well for disseminating information. And to have hope and to know that you're not alone and all this, I think would be the other two pieces.
Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing. I think as a parent, though, it's always very, very difficult to keep your eye on the prize and to keep on chugging on. And hearing both of you provide that perspective from both being a caregiver and being in the field, I think is incredibly valuable and a really important reminder of the resources that a group like NAMI has available for parents who are struggling on that journey right now. So thank you. And Ashley, I will kick it back over to you to start our opening up of our audience questions.
Thanks so much. Before we do that, I know Denise is going to come back and help moderate any questions that come through in the Q&A. So feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A box down at the bottom. But before we jump into that, I just want to say thank you again to every single person that participated on this panel, also to those that joined. I found this conversation so rich and so beautiful, specifically because everyone came with a different perspective, and yet there were so many common threads in the messaging that everyone shared tonight that it just re-emphasizes the importance of not going alone, not doing it alone, that you are not alone. There are people here, there are resources, there are systems of support And when we bring all of us together and we continue to work in this space, we can see really sustainable change happen. And I appreciate Angelina dropping into the chat that it's a journey. At Action for Healthy Kids, we talk about this a lot, specifically around social emotional health. We use the phrase, social emotional health is a journey, not a destination. We are never going to arrive at optimal health. We are always working to grow and evolve. And I think that that goes without saying with tonight's conversation. So I do have a question that came in from the audience around, navigating limited resources. What is a good starting place for teachers wanting to support students and integrate social emotional learning within the classroom? I know, Nicole, Nicole and Isa both started sharing some different things that teachers could do, utilizing emojis, doing check-ins, sharing resources. Isa, you talked a lot about education. And I want to just reiterate that, NAMI has shared a ton of resources in the chat, and we will gather all of those resources in follow-up so that we can share all of those with you. You'll of course get the recording from tonight, and we'll also be sharing some of our resources at Action for Healthy Kids. I know Denise started by sharing some of the curricula and some of the things that are coming out. We'll be sharing those with you as well, so that you can start to take small steps. Because as we learned tonight, we can't jump in and do it all at once. It's taking those small steps towards that goal. Denise, are there any additional questions that have come through that we want to open up to panelists, or some additional conversation that we might want to have?
Sure, yeah, so at this time, if there is anyone that would like to ask a question, if you would like to put it in the chat at this time, and we'll try to address that amongst the panelists and our moderator. So if anyone has a question at this time, we'll give you a second or so to type that question in the chat. So you don't have to put it in the Q&A. You can go ahead and put it directly into the chat box. All right, and it's okay to have a pause because I didn't know if people needed time to kind of type it in. So I wanted to do that and pause intentionally. So I do want to just echo on what Ashley and Brianne have said. This has been such a rich conversation. From a parent lens, I am so full when it comes to the information that was shared today. What we'd like to do is, as we stated before, we will be sharing this information, the recording with you at a later time. What I would like to do is go ahead and put into the chat, if you have time as we're wrapping up, we'd love to hear your feedback about today's session. So I put the link in there for you to go ahead and share any feedback that you have at this time. We'll also be sharing some information as an organization. We'll be following up with everyone, sharing the information with you along with the NAMI resources. And so if you have time to fill that out now, we would love for you to go in to do that. On behalf of Action for Healthy Kids, on behalf of NAMI, we want to thank you all for coming and being with us this evening, allowing us the opportunity to be able to share and have open and honest conversation with you. We truly appreciate the time that you've put together. And we also want to thank the panelists for such a rich, open, transparent conversation.
Thank you.
And we are ending. I think we're, let's see, let me see, what time is it? 7:43. So again, we thank everyone today for coming. Please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
So much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, everyone. Thank you so much.